Chances are, if you come across one of my videos these days, you know me as Skilled with Phil, just another mountain bike YouTuber. We got on. If things had gone a little differently, you might not know me as Skilled with Phil at all. I could still be racing professionally, chasing that elusive World Cup dream. However, somewhere along the way, my path changed. So here's why I gave that all up to become a guy with a YouTube channel.
But first rider we're to see, who's this?
This is Phil Metz, all the way from New Hampshire, so east. Whoa.
Wow.
Getting rowdy already.
We were talking about
First
that.
turn.
It's good to see him back on the GRT circuit after a few years off. Spent a lot of time building trail and going to school.
Yeah, he just started his freshman year at Lee's McRae College.
Ooh, almost losing the front end. That could have been disastrous in this section of track.
So he's your NCAA D1 collegiate national champion.
Phil's definitely one of those Chargers, checkers or wreckers type rider. If he stays on his bike, he is gonna be a threat to the podium. How wild this boy can get on a bike. So much entrance speed into the Asylum Rock Garden. Look at that speed, Ross.
That's crazy, dude.
Wow, gapping out of the cheese wedge into that section and
Up
then still
by
able to hold the inside line.
4.5 seconds.
Phil is showing just huge amounts of talent right now.
Over the rocks, just floating.
3:18.
Oh my god.
By 12
seconds.
Now, before I answer that question, I think it's helpful to give you a little bit more context and let you know how I got into racing in the first place. So the way that I got into BMX racing was we happened to live by some dirt jumps that we didn't know about. On a ride with my parents, we were riding along and we came across these jumps and kids were doing all these cool little tricks. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And I ended up trying one of those jumps and crashing. All the kids came running over to me and told my parents about BMX bikes and that I should probably look into getting one. So my parents brought me to a bike shop like the next day, and while we were looking at bikes, the bike shop owner told us about BMX racing. We had no idea what this was. My parents weren't competitive people, but they were really supportive, and they decided to do a lot of research and bring me to my first BMX race. And I was really good at it, so they kept bringing me more. I raced in the world championships, I raced in national championships, I have many accolades. I've raced with many people who have competed in the Olympics, who've gotten gold medal in the Olympics. I have beaten the current gold medal Olympian. Eventually, I moved around a lot. I lost interest in BMX. Moved to New Hampshire where we had mountains and no BMX tracks. So I kind of shifted gears towards downhill racing. It was new, it was exciting, and I was pretty good at it.
What?
What are we doing?
It's a Huck Fest, $5 buy-in, winner takes all. So far we got Jamie Ford.
Guys, pull up
You guys ready? Yeah! Wow!
Oh my goodness!
Let's go, Justin! So they go home. Oh my God! Oh my! Little boy Blue, you ready? Let's do it! Runner up! Yeah, little boy Blue! Yeah! Oh yeah!
I struggled at the beginning. Like, it was weird. Like, some places, when it was dry and rocky, I was really good. But when it was wet and rooty, I did really poorly. And so it took a while for me to like hone in on my skills to get to a good level racer where I was consistent across all different types of terrain. But in dual slalom, when I was a junior, I was junior national champ because it was more BMX-y, and that was something I was really good at. It was BMX with mountain bike flair. Eventually I turned pro, but I actually stopped racing before I turned pro, because once I graduated from high school, I started going to culinary school. That was what you were supposed to do. You're supposed to go to college. So I went to culinary school. My SAT scores were okay, but they weren't great. I was interested in the hands-on classes I went to. I took machine tool, I took woodworking, I took culinary arts, electronics, sewing, probably a few more that I'm forgetting. I liked all of them. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew that the book stuff wasn't for me. But once I started working in the industry more seriously after school, I realized pretty quickly that it was not for me. People are pretty toxic. You had no weekends off. You had no social life. I was barely riding my bike and I was becoming pretty unhealthy, and I realized I wanted to race again. So I got back into racing, and within the first year I had my first pro win. Like next year I ended up finishing 5th in the national championships. I was the only privateer on the podium. It was pretty cool. I thought companies were gonna come knocking at my door wanting to sponsor me. That was not the case. Companies do not, or rarely ever will companies reach out to you. I didn't know that. I was naive. No one really explained the sponsorship process to me. And social media wasn't really a thing at that point. So there was no way to really advertise yourself at the time. There was, but like not like we know today. Fast forward a few years, I had 2 third-place national finishes on the podium with Aaron Gwynn when Aaron Gwynn was at the top of his game. So it was pretty cool. I thought my career trajectory as a racer was really looking up. And then I broke my collarbone. I was supposed to race my first World Cup that year. From the national championships the previous year, I had enough points to compete in World Cups. So I was going to do the Wyndham World Cup. Unfortunately, right before doing it, I broke my collarbone. This was the first broken bone I had suffered throughout my race career, and it was a major setback. Luckily, UCI points don't expire for a year, so there was a race in Hafjell, Norway, so I was able to heal up and go do it. However, in practice, I broke my hand. This was the second broken bone in my race career, and it sucked. At the time, I didn't know my hand was broken. I went to the medics and they said that it was sprained. It hurt, and I didn't think it was just a sprain, but I was trusting them. But I still managed to do my qualifying run, and I crashed in my qualifying run. But once I got home and got x-rays, it was indeed confirmed that I was broken. I broke my 5th metacarpal. So when I got back from Norway, I started doing what I needed to do to find sponsorship for next year. Luckily, I had a ton of good race results from that year, and I decided I needed a website. So I taught myself HTML, CSS, and literally coded my own website. And then I got my first sponsorship where I got a free bike, and I was excited about that. I was really excited about actually having the support that I wanted. Problem is, I didn't really have the support I wanted. I ended up breaking my hand, and this was the 3rd bone I had broken in a 1-year time period. And keep in mind, I'd never broken a bone before. So within a whole year, I broke my collarbone, I broke my hand, and then I broke the same hand all within 1 year. And I wanted to make sure that I let that hand recover, so I did. During that time, I started playing around on social media because I was not active on the bike. So I started doing a makeshift dual slalom series. I built a course, promoted it, and it was super, super grassroots. But I met a lot of cool people who I still know to this day through that race series. To be honest, if it wasn't for breaking my hand, I would have never started this YouTube channel. It gave me some time off the bike to think about ways I can be involved in the cycling industry away from racing. But eventually I did get healed up and I did get back into racing. When I was riding for this company, I broke one of their frames. I had an incident where I crashed and the result was a broken frame. I contacted the company and I essentially just got ghosted. I was a little bit pissed off. I was also naive and probably said something in the email that I probably shouldn't have because I was bitter. And it's around that point that I was really reconsidering my path forward as a racer. I had 3 major setbacks within a 1-year time span. I wasn't making any money. I just lost all my sponsorship. I was a little frustrated, and this whole YouTube thing seemed really interesting. At the time, I barely knew how to use a camera, so I spent a lot of time learning how to edit and watching tutorials on YouTube about how to use these things. And I was thinking to myself the whole time, wait, there are channels dedicated to filmmaking. Are there channels dedicated to mountain biking? And at the time, there wasn't. That was going into the year of 2014, so I was like, screw it, I'm done. I'm going to focus on social media. I don't know what it is, but I think this YouTube thing is pretty cool. So I'd already kind of started my YouTube channel. I started doing some trail building stuff. We're getting towards the end of the building process, and right now I'm about to shape this tabletop behind me, and I want to show you my process of how I do it. In 2014, I also applied to college because I knew there were scholarships available for collegiate cycling. And I was like, all right, well, I don't think my racing career is going to go anywhere. I might as well see what kinds of opportunities are available for me. So I ended up going to Leeds McRae, and my first year there, I won the collegiate national championships for dual slalom and downhill. And Keep in mind, the people who I was racing against were really good riders. There's actually quite a few famous cyclists who have gone through collegiate cycling. Kate Courtney, Dakota Norton, Dylan Johnson, Brent Brookwalter, and many others have gone through collegiate cycling at one point or another. Getting back to my race career, that result got me excited to race again. 2015 was probably the peak of my race career. I ended up qualifying 24th or 23rd, I always get the numbers mixed up, in the UCI World Cup at Wyndham. They only take 80 riders out of like the 200 or so riders who are admitted into the race, because they don't take everybody. You have to be vetted essentially. You have to have a USA jersey from your cycling federation, or you need to have the required UCI points to compete. And this is again in 2015. The rules have since changed, but I was just hoping to qualify. I would be happy with 80. I wanted to get top 60. That I thought was a realistic but stretch goal, because keep in mind, these are the best riders in the world. So I laid down what I thought was a pretty safe run, and I ended up qualifying 24th or 23rd, whatever it was. I was pretty stoked with that. I was right behind Mick Hanna. In my race run, I ended up crashing. I guess like the best way to describe my racing style was checkers or wreckers, and I chose wreckers. But there was a split in that race where I had the 7th fastest time of the day.
Yeah, Phil! Yeah, Phil! Wow.
Now, I was super proud of that result. Not only did I qualify at a World Cup, but I exceeded my expectations, and in the finals, I was able to see how my time could stack up to some of the best riders in the world. Now, to be honest, racing World Cups was never a huge goal of mine. It was just something that happened to line up, and I was able to do it. But I knew to be able to do racing at the level of some of the top guys, I wasn't willing to make those kinds of sacrifices. Not only do you have to dedicate basically your whole life to training, there are a lot of risks involved. Half those guys are constantly broken and not able to race. That seems like a big gamble to me. Not to mention, a lot of those riders in the World Cup Series are not making any money. Unless you're at the top level, you're probably not making that much money, and you have to have another job. To me, that seemed like a really bad business decision, which is why YouTube seemed like a smarter path forward. No one was doing it. I could tell from the tech space that you could earn a living on YouTube, and to me, it just seemed a lot more exciting. I would be able to ride my bike and not get myself injured. So today I want to share a few tips that helped me learn how to manual. Keep in mind, at that time on YouTube, there were no channels dedicated to mountain biking. There was nobody doing tutorials. It wasn't until the smartphone gained traction that my YouTube channel really started to take off. I showed up to the national championships either that year or the next year, and I wasn't recognized as Phil Metz, the person who's going to potentially podium at this race. I was recognized as Skills with Phil, the YouTuber. It was at that moment that I realized that I had a future on YouTube. In 2016, I did an urban downhill race in Colombia.
We have practice today at like 3 o'clock, I think. So I'm pretty excited to get going. Never done an urban race and not sure what to expect. All right. Woo, that was scary.
This was the first time I did an urban downhill race, and I was really excited about it. I wanted to prove to the world that I was a force to be reckoned with. In an urban race, they have to shut down the city so you can do this race. So they're not going to shut down the city for a weekend. They're going to shut it down for like 6 hours. So you're under a bit of a time constraint to walk the course, do practice, and then race. Normally, racing is a 2 or 3 day event. This was like a 6-hour event, and they start you out on a set of stairs, and they're not consistent. Some of them are like, let's say 10 stairs, some of them are like 8 stairs, and I had just gotten a new bike, and the shock wasn't set up. It was set up for riding on mountain bike trails. My first run, I was like, all right, I don't have much practice time. I'm just going to wing it, and we're just going to do what I know how to do best.
All right, so I'm about to go off my first run. It's a little nervous, not sure what to expect. You got like a 1 foot drop into a stairs right off the bat. But
Come on, dude.
just crashed.
Are you okay?
Well, that sucked. Not exactly the way I want to start my race here. First run, I tried to be a hero. Gapped a set of stairs, got confused as to where I was, and didn't gap another set that I should have. And when I got to the last set, I just G'd out and my back end just flung me over the bars. Holy crap, I don't know how I'm not more hurt, because falling on dirt is much different than falling on concrete here.
So that crash, even though it wasn't that bad, I didn't get seriously injured, it really messed with my head. The next year, I just couldn't get myself to take the same kinds of risks I had done the previous year that separated me from the other racers. And as a result, my race results weren't as good as I wanted them. And so I was feeling kind of down about how I was doing as a racer, but at the same time, as a racer, I didn't really have any other identity. But this YouTube thing seemed pretty interesting. It seemed like it was going someplace.
I'm here with Phil Kometz.
How's it going?
And we're gonna play a game of bike.
I liked spending time behind the computer. I liked the internet. Social media was not what it is today. It was really interesting. I was like, you know what? I think this is what I want to do. It's also worth considering that when you show up to a lot of these UCI events, that there are strict rules about where you could place a camera. And it's also different UCI officials enforce the rules differently.
Just so you know.
You can't do, not for the race. Yeah.
You got it.
Sometimes you'll show up at a venue and they're like, yeah, you can wear that camera. No, you can't wear that camera. And you'll try to like push back. 2016, keep in mind, GoPro image stabilization didn't really exist. The footage was pretty awful. It wasn't until a few years later that camera technology caught up. Well, something to also consider is like during the whole period that I raced, I made money from winning races, but it was like, you know, as you can see the checks over there. Got 500 Canadian there, 400 there, 300 there, and then 300 there. That covers race expenses. It doesn't really pay the bills. You could live in a van down by the river your whole life and really kind of scrape by, but after a certain period of time, that tends to get old. I saw YouTube as an opportunity to make a living doing what I loved, revolving around bikes, and nobody was doing it at the time. This is at the beginning of the mountain bike YouTube movement. And so I went with it. And I'm proud of what I've accomplished since then. I have bought a house thanks to the accomplishments I've done on YouTube. There's another aspect of racing that I haven't talked about is racing is stressful. Every time I hear the start gating beeps, I am immediately anxious. I've been subjected to that noise for a large portion of my life, and I just don't like it. I also felt like my self-worth was tied to my race results. So if I had a bad race, I would feel bad about myself. If I had a good race, I'd feel good about myself. And I just got really annoyed after a series of really bad race results, especially in 2016, that I was just getting really down on myself. I wasn't having the success that I wanted, but also logically I knew why. But it's hard not to get caught up with something like that. So I just kind of went cold turkey and was like, I'm done racing. I want nothing to do with this. I resented everything to do with racing. And so the peak of my career has passed. And I'm still a very competitive person. It's hard to not be a competitive person when all you know how to do is be competitive.
We do here is go back.
Okay, I didn't know where to add this part, so I'm gonna add it here. So during this whole time, I was also pretty interested in the freestyle aspect of riding. Usually as a competitor, you pick one thing or the other and you kind of stick to that. Throughout my whole riding career, I've been interested in dabbling in both the freestyle aspect and the racing, which is pretty unusual. Growing up, I was a big dirt jumper. At 13, I landed my first backflip. In 2008, I won the amateur version of the Highland Claymore slopestyle contest. But overall, I tended to be better at racing, so I stuck with racing. But I was one of the few racers that could also do some freestyle stuff. And now that's not that uncommon. At the time, that was pretty rare.
That worked so well.
All right, I know this video has been all over the place, but let's bring it all home. The reason why I got out of racing is not one reason. It's a bunch of different reasons that accumulated together. So it was stressful. I know some people can do a race just for fun, but it wasn't something that I was really able to do. When I was in a race situation, I wanted to win. And that meant I was completely focused on my job, and that was to do well. And so it was hard to go to a race and just be there, be present, have fun. I've gotten a little bit better at that, but still something that still bothers me now. Secondly, getting injured when you're racing at a high level is inevitable. You're just increasing your odds of something bad happening to you, and it's scary. It's not something that I enjoy. It's not something that anyone enjoys, but for me, I just didn't like that feeling of riding defensively. I wanted to attack the trail, and the thought of getting hurt prevented me from riding the way I needed to. Now, financial is obviously a pretty big component to racing. I need to have money to live. I have bills to pay, so do you. And to cover those bills, well, you need to be making money. And when I was racing, I was not making money. It wasn't until I started this YouTube channel that I started making money from riding. As cool as traveling is, always being on the road and living out of a van or whatever, it gets old. And you go to all these cool venues and you only get a chance to ride one single trail for 3 days. It's kind of boring. You want to be able to sample all the other trails, but because you're always constantly on the road, moving to one venue or another, you don't really get a chance to experience the venues. Now, the next one is racing just wasn't that interesting to me. Yes, it was still a challenge, but the challenge wasn't interesting to me anymore. So I just didn't have that drive to do well. It wasn't as novel as it was when I started racing.
Phil Metz isn't your typical downhill rider. In a few short weeks, he'll trade the trail for the classroom as he pursues a business degree.
You know, I had difficulty with sponsors and getting injured, so I needed a backup plan quickly.
You have a culinary degree and you're studying business in college right now, and you're riding professionally.
Yep.
Where do you see yourself when you graduate?
In the end, I want to open up my own bike park in some ways. That would combine biking, business, and everything I love, like trail building.
But this summer was full of lessons.
But I think the most important part is learning how to deal with your failures in a positive manner.
And Metz is passing on that knowledge with videos on his YouTube channel.
But my goal is to really engage the community because I want to give back. Like, I've been riding for 20 years, and I think it's important as a rider to help other people out. So the original plan for this year was to get back into racing, and I was working with GT, my sponsor, on doing just that. However, you may have heard the recent news about GT, so yeah, those plans are kind of out the window. I still plan to do some racing, but don't expect me to do any World Cups. I don't have much interest in doing that. I will also add, I don't have any sponsors this year, so if you want to help support this channel and what I do, I'll leave a link to our Patreon page in the description below. Additionally, I do have some merch coming, which I'll link in the description below as well. So hopefully you enjoyed listening to this story. There's definitely a lot more to it that I've left out, but I felt like 20 minutes was just the right amount of time for most people's attention span. So thank you for sticking with me. My name is Phil Metz. Thanks for playing bikes with me today, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.